The cameras were rolling, the lights were blazing, and millions of eyes across the nation were fixed on the live broadcast. It was supposed to be another fiery debate between Senator John Kennedy and Representative Jasmine Crockett, two figures who had built reputations on sharp wit and unshakable conviction. But no one watching that night could have predicted what was about to unfold, or how one careless moment would change everything. Kennedy leaned forward at the desk, his trademark smirk curling on his lips. He had made a career out of cutting remarks, his southern drawl turning even the harshest criticism into something that sounded like honeyed sarcasm. With the audience tense and waiting for fireworks, he chose his moment. "Well, Representative Crockett," he said, voice laced with mockery, "if half as much effort went into governing as went into dramatics, maybe Washington would be worth the taxpayer's dime." The audience laughed, and Kennedy sat back, confident he'd landed a blow. Jasmine Crockett, however, remained still. Her eyes didn't flinch, her hands didn't move, and for a second, it almost looked like Kennedy's jab had silenced her. He smiled wider, certain the moment belonged to him. What he didn't notice, what no one in that room realized, was that Crockett's mic, thought to be muted after her last speaking turn, was still live. Her voice came soft at first, almost a whisper, but clear enough for the world to hear. "They laugh at me, but they don't see the nights I go home and cry out of frustration, a broken bar, because all I want is for the people who trusted me to feel heard. They think this is a game, but it's not. This is people's lives." The laughter in the audience evaporated instantly. Viewers across the country leaned closer to their screens. Crockett hadn't meant to speak publicly. Her words weren't rehearsed, weren't political theater. They were raw, unfiltered truth. Kennedy shifted in his seat, realizing something was wrong. He glanced at the moderator, then the crowd, trying to gauge what was happening. But Crockett continued, her voice trembling with conviction. "I sit in these hearings and I wonder, a broken bar, do they know what it's like to sit across from a mother who just buried her child and has no answers? Do they know what it's like to walk into a neighborhood that feels forgotten, where kids think no one in power even knows their names? I can't afford to treat this like a clever debate, because when I go home, I don't go back to applause. I go back to people begging me for change." Her words cut through the silence like a blade. The studio audience stared, many wide-eyed, some holding their breath. Viewers at home flooded social media instantly, clips of her unintended speech spreading faster than wildfire. Kennedy, for once, didn't have a comeback. His smirk faltered. He shifted his papers, cleared his throat, tried to look composed, but the damage was already done. What was supposed to be his triumphant moment had turned into one of the most humbling nights of his career. The debate ended awkwardly. Kennedy made polite remarks, but no one remembered them. Everyone was talking about Crockett's hot mic confession, as it came to be called. Headlines ran with it, not mocking her vulnerability but praising it. For once, a politician's unscripted words were not a scandal but a revelation. The following week, Crockett was invited onto news programs, not for fiery clashes, but for heartfelt conversations. People across the nation sent messages of support, sharing their own stories of struggle and gratitude for someone finally speaking their truth. Constituents in her district began showing up at her office in greater numbers, not because they demanded miracles, but because they knew they had someone who cared enough to fight. As for Kennedy, he faced a reckoning of his own. His staff quietly admitted the moment had been a miscalculation. For years, his wit had served him well, but this time it had made him look out of touch. Instead of doubling down, Kennedy surprised many by issuing a rare statement of humility. He admitted that while he and Crockett often disagreed, he respected her passion and the sincerity of her words. It wasn't an apology in so many words, but it was the closest anyone had ever seen from him. The incident changed the tone of their future exchanges. Crockett grew stronger, no longer afraid of mockery because she had seen the power of authenticity. Kennedy, meanwhile, tempered his sharpness, still witty, but more careful, less willing to gamble on humiliation for a laugh. In the end, what was meant as a moment of ridicule became a lesson for everyone watching. It reminded people that politics isn't about the sound bites, the applause, or the clever lines. It's about the raw humanity behind those microphones, the lives affected by every vote, and the courage it takes to stand vulnerable in a room full of critics. And so, that night on live TV, when John Kennedy mocked Jasmine Crockett, he may have thought he had won the crowd, but in reality, her forgotten microphone gave the world a glimpse of something far more powerful than mockery, a truth spoken from the heart, and that, more than anything, was what left the nation silent.